Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we'll be continuing our journey in exploring Azure. On this episode, we will explore and dig deep into the coding and implementation of Azure Functions. This is the second part of Azure Functions explorations. So, what are we going to be covering today? First, we're going to be discussing the ingredients that we need in order for us to actually code and deploy the Azure Functions. Then we're going to be discussing the different ways that we can actually build these functions, and then we're going to be jumping into the coding. As always, please comment your questions, clarification and suggestions in the comments down below. As well, please like, share and subscribe if you like this video. It will really help the channel. Now let's get started. We're gonna now discuss the ingredients that we're gonna be needing in order for us to build an Azure function online, locally, and upload it online. And then once that's done, we're gonna actually develop our Azure function. So what's the ingredients? We need Visual Studio Code, which is gonna be our code editor. You can find the link for it on the screen here, and I will add it on the description down below, as well as a .NET 5 SDK. You can find the link on the screen, or you can find it in the description down below. The installation process is very simple. All you need to do is download the file and click on the wizard that comes up, and it will be automatically installed. So how can we create Azure functions? So currently we have three ways that we can actually create Azure function. First, we can utilize the Azure Portal wizard in order for us to create it. So it will be a step-by-step wizard that we need to fill manually, and it will create the Azure function for us. The second one is utilizing Azure CLI, which is utilizing the command line, where we will actually create that Azure function from that command line and will automatically reflect it for our Azure account. And lastly, we can actually utilize Terraform if you want to have more of a automated process. In order for us to create the Azure function, we can actually utilize Terraform, and it will create everything for us from the get-go, and we can make sure that it automatically run every time we run that script. So we write the script once and we can create as many as we want in the future. So we're gonna delve deep into these three into more details. Now let's jump into coding. So now let's open our terminal, and the first thing we're gonna be doing is we need to make sure that our .NET SDK has been installed successfully, and we have it created correctly on our machine. So in order for us to do that, we're going to be utilize the .NET version keyword, so .NET -- version, and as we can see here, I have version 5.0.302, which is the latest version by the time of this recording. If you have any other number, that should be fine, but if you see any error, you need to re-download the .NET SDK and reinstall it. The first method, as we said, we have three methods in order for us to create an Azure function. So the first one is going to be through the portal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my web browser, and then we're going to go through the process through the portal of how we can create an Azure function. So how can we create it through the portal? Very easy. The first thing we need to do is we need to look for it. So inside the search bar, what we can do is we can type function. And as we can see, the first one is function app, which is, as we said, it's an instance of Azure functions. So let's click on that. And as we can see here, it's telling us that we don't have any function app, which is the expected one. So what we need to do is we need to click on create function app. And once we do that, it's gonna take us to the wizard that we have discussed before. So the first one is gonna ask us what type of subscription do we want. And currently my subscription is pay as you go. That's the payment methods, and then we're gonna but just beware, this subscription type is different than the actual consumption plan that we have. So the pay as you go here is my actual payment plan that I have with Azure. So they charge me on a monthly basis whatever I spend. It's not like a premium plan where I have certain number of credit that I can actually utilize. So once that's done, we need to choose our resource group. And resource group, we can think of it as like a bucket where all of those functionality that we need to put, or a group, all of those functionality is going to fall under the same group or the same umbrella. So I'm going to call this demo AZ func W, which stands for wizard. I'm going to click OK, and it has accepted it. And now I need to give my Azure function a name. And I can actually give it any name that I want. So let us give it demo-1-func-w, for example. Or yeah, that should be fine. It gave me the checkbox, which is what I want. And then here is giving me what do I want? Do I want to connect a Docker container, or I want to upload code for now I'm gonna choose code. And then as we said, it has the runtime stack, so I need to specify it. So I'm gonna be choosing .NET, and I'm gonna be choosing the 3.1 version. And basically I'm gonna say, where do I want this function to be hosted? So I want it to host it, for example, right now I want to choose UK South, and I'm gonna click next. So next is hosting. So every Azure function needs to have a storage account, and this storage account will be responsible for handling all of those data that's gonna be processing within those functions. So an Azure function account, storage account will be created automatically for me. Then I need to choose an operating system. So I want this Azure function to run on a Windows or a Linux environment. I could choose any. I'm gonna keep it as Windows. And then here we can see the plan type. And this within this plan type, we can see that we have the 3 that we have discussed. So we have consumption, premium, and app service plan, which is the dedicated one. So let's click on the information. So as consumption, it can tell us it's the lowest minimum cost, and it tells us that it's a pay-as-we-go service. So whatever we utilize, we pay for. Premium one, as we can see, it changed because it automatically gave me some kind of premium plan that I can utilize, and it gave me here the number of resources that's going to be allocated for my function. It says here 3.5 gigabits of memory and 2.10 of Azure Compute Unit, which is basically the CPU time that I'm gonna get, and I can change it and to make it bigger or as smaller as I need, which is good, but it also depends on my requirement. And let's see the last one, which is gonna be the app service plan. And the app service plan is similar to it, but with different options and way more customization. And we said it's gonna be more dedicated and way more expensive. So for now, for the sake of this, and as I said, I highly recommend it. It's gonna be the consumption plan, and basically it's a serverless one. And after that, we're gonna go to monitoring. And monitoring here, it's basically the application insights that we have discussed before, and it asks me if I want to enable it. By default it's yes, so I'm going to keep it as yes. And then here I'm going to give it the application insight a name, and then it's going to put it in the same region where my application, my function app is going to be running on. And then tags basically are for costing services and pricing, so on and so forth. We don't really care about it now. And lastly, we're going to go to the create, and here we can see that basically we have like a summary of all of the choices that we have made. And as soon as I click on the create, it will start actually creating the Azure function for me. This usually take up to like 30 seconds to be completed, and once that is created, I can see a button that's gonna tell me to go to the resource that I have just created. And from that point, once I go there, I will be able to actually see that the application function has the Azure function has been created, and basically the function app has been created, but there will not be any function inside of those. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a function through the web browser, and basically from there we can actually see how we can actually create an Azure function all in the browser without actually writing anything on the code on our local machine and uploading it to Azure. So I think this is mostly done. We can see here that we got all of the green checkboxes, which is what we like to see. And let's give it another few seconds. Perfect. Now that the application has completed successfully, now I can go to the go to resource, and I can see here that I have my own function app instance has created for me. And if I go, for example, here into functions, so I can see all of that all of the functions it's contained inside my function app. I can see that I don't have nothing at all, because I haven't created anything. All I did is basically created the main function app, but I didn't create any function inside of it. So if I want to add functions to this, I can do it both ways. I can create it locally on my machine, which is going to be doing later on, but for now I'm just going to create one inside the browser, and we can see how easy for us to get up and started with Azure function directly from the browser. So I'm going to click on add, and here it's going to say where do you want to develop it. I'm going to choose I'm going to develop it in the portal. And then here, as we can see here, which template do you want to use. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to use HTTP trigger, which is the easiest one. And basically here it's going to ask me, give it a name. I'm going to call it my YouTube demo 1. and what authorization level. So how am I able to access this? Do I need, for example, to give it some kind of a key in order for it to authenticate? Because basically I don't want anyone to directly interact with my function. So if I put it on function level, it means that there's certain authorization that I need to provide every time I call this function. Anonymous means that anyone can call the function anytime they want. There's no limitation. And admin is only the person with the highest admin can actually call this function. So for the sake of this demo, I'm gonna put it anonymous, and I'm gonna click on add. And this will take also a few seconds. And as we can see here, the function has been created successfully. And as we can see here, if I click on code plus test, what I'm able to see right now is I can actually see the source code of my application running in the browser without me actually to worry about anything. And what I can do as well, I'm not gonna change anything. All for example, what I can change is I can change the response message. So I'm gonna just add YouTube on top here. I'm just gonna save this. And what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be calling this function. So I'm gonna click on get function URL, and I'm gonna click copy, and then I'm gonna go to a browser, and then as we can see here that YouTube has automatically been added to it, and we can see it has automatically processed my request, and we can see. So let's come here and let me change here YouTube. I'm gonna put Mohamad Lawand YouTube channel, for example, and I'm gonna remove all of this. Don't really need it. Or let's change this, so we can say welcome to Azure Functions deep dive. That should be fine. And as we can see here, it takes a query string of name. That's completely fine as well. So let's save this. Every time we save, it will recompile it and save the compiled version to the function itself. So all I need to do right now is just go here and just add name, and I can put Mohamad. And if I click on enter now, we can see welcome Mohamad to Azure Function Deep Dive. So basically what I'm able to do here, I'm able to actually code my application through the portal, and everything I do is from the web browser without actually have to run the code locally on my machine, which is great. So the next step is actually we're gonna be utilizing now the local terminal in order for us to create all of our functions. The next step right now is we need to install some dependencies on our machine in order for us to be able to utilize Azure Functions. So since I'm on my Mac, I'm gonna be utilizing Homebrew, but I'm gonna add in the description the link where you can actually download for Windows and different operating system. So if you're utilizing a Mac and you wanna get started within Homebrew, all you need to do is type brew tab /Azure /functions. I have already installed this, so it will not re-download it, but if you're doing it for the first time, it's gonna take roughly around maybe 30 seconds to complete, and as you can see here, it says that it's automatically there. Perfect. So the next one that I want to do is I want to install the Azure Functions core tool. So again, within Homebrew, I'm gonna put brew install Azure Functions core tools at 3, which is basically I want to utilize the latest version of the tools, which we have discussed. There's different 3 versions of them. I want to utilize the latest one, and also this is already installed for me, and it's gonna say you want to reinstall it. I'm gonna be low and I want to reinstall it. And then once we have those, I'm gonna now install the Azure CLI, which is gonna be the command language interface. So basically it will allow me to directly communicate with the Azure portal from my terminal. And to do that, I'm just gonna utilize brew update and brew install Azure-CLI and basically once I do that, it will update my homebrew, which is basically all of the dependencies that I have, and then it will install Azure CLI. I have already done all of this before, but for you it might take up to like 30 seconds to a minute to download and install them on your machine. Great. So once we have done that, now what I need to do is I need to log into Azure, because I have already downloaded the Azure CLI on my machine, and basically it's a tool, if you want to think about it that way, that will allow me to directly communicate with Azure through my terminal. So in order for me to utilize this tool, I need to log into it. I need to log into Azure and through my terminal in order for it to know that and for it to establish a connection between my terminal and my Azure account. So how do I do that? It's very simple. Because I have installed the Azure CLI, all I can do is I need to put AZ space login, and basically this command is going to open the web browser for me. I have already logged into it, but I'll show you again. And as you can see here, it's prompting me to log in, and I'm just gonna log in, and let me accept this notification, send notification, yes. And now it's gonna log in. It's gonna give me a message that I can go back to my terminal. Perfect. Now it's telling me that I have logged into Microsoft Azure, and now I can close this window. Great. So let's close this window and let's go back to the terminal. And as we can see here from the terminal that I have automatically been logged in. Great. So the next step after I do that is now we need to check that everything is running as it should be on my machine. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna write 3 commands, basically one for Azure Functions, one for the Function CLI, Azure CLI, and the .NET to make sure the everything is there as it should be. So the first command is gonna be func -- version, and this is gonna check if I have the latest version of Azure Function installed on my machine so I can develop against it. Great. The second one is gonna be AZ -- version, AZ, which is gonna stand for the Azure CLI, and I'm gonna check that since I already utilize Azure login, it should be fine, but here it's just a way to make sure that I have the latest version available. Great, and it's giving me that it's up to date. And lastly, I'm gonna put .NET -- lists - SDKs. It's gonna give me a list of the .NET SDKs that I have installed on my machine, and we can see I have 5.0 and 3.1. Great. Now let's create our Azure function, which we have been waiting for to do from the terminal. So because it's an Azure function, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna create the project for it, and then after that we're gonna start it locally so we can see it, and then we're gonna be pushing it into Azure and running it from there. So the first thing we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be utilizing the func keyword. The func means that we're creating a function, and we're giving it a new because it's a new function, and we're gonna give it a name. I'm gonna call it HTTP example, and then we're gonna be utilizing a template because we said we're gonna provide it a trigger within a template. So for us it's a HTTP, so we're gonna put template, and it's gonna be the HTTP trigger. And then after that I wanna specify the authorization level. For the sake of this demo, I'm gonna put it anonymous. Great. Once I have done that, click on enter, and we can see here it prompts me of which runtime or that I want, and I'm gonna make it basically in .NET, so I'm gonna put 1, and as you can see it confirmed my choice for .NET, and this will take another few seconds, and we can see it started to creating the application for me, and now the application has been created. So let's open it in the code editor. Great. And as we can see here inside the code editor, I have my YouTube project, which is basically it took the same name of the folder that it's in, and I have here my Azure function automatically created for me. So first of all, let's open the terminal. So if I go here to view terminal, and the first thing I'm just gonna type .NET build for it to install all of the different packages that it needs to restore. Should take a few seconds. Perfect. Now the build succeeded. It restored everything. We don't have anything or any red squiggly line. And as we can see here, it's the same text that we saw on the web browser when we created it through the portal. Now let's run it locally. If we want to run Azure function locally, it's very simple. Inside on the terminal, all we need to do is type func, which stands for function, and start. It means that I want to start my function, and this should take another few seconds. And as we can see here, it's automatically building. And what it did here, it provided me with a URL that I actually utilized locally in order for me to communicate with my function, which is great. So let me take this, let me copy it, and let me open my web browser. And I can see here in my web browser, I'm just gonna give it a name. I'm gonna put YouTube now. I'm gonna click on enter, and as we can see here, hello YouTube, this is a HTTP trigger. Perfect. And now if I go back here, we can see that the log is automatically showing. Great. So this means that the application is running, and if I want to stop it, all I need to do is press on Ctrl+C to stop this application. So now that I have basically created my Azure function locally, and I did all of the logic that I wanted to, and right now what I want to do is I want to upload it. So how can I do that? So what I'm gonna do right now, let me go back to the web browser, and basically I'm gonna delete this function that we have created here. So let's go to resource group, and I'm gonna delete all of this demo AZ func that we have just created. I don't really need it, so let's delete it. And basically what we're gonna be doing, we're gonna be creating all of this directly from the terminal. So instead of utilizing the browser to create all of this, we're gonna be actually utilizing the terminal to create all of this. And once we create it from the terminal, we're gonna be uploading it directly to Azure, and we're gonna see all of this process of how it works. So right now, let's wait until this is finished deleting. So now that the resources have been deleted successfully, let's make sure, and let's go back here. And if I click on resource group, I don't see it. Perfect. Now let's go back to the Visual Studio Code, and let's start creating it directly from the terminal. So let's make this a bit bigger, and let's clear it. Great. So the first thing we're going to be doing if we want to create everything directly from the terminal is, first, as we did before, we need to create a resource group. It's going to be holding everything together. So how do we do that? We're going to put AZ group create. So as AZ stands for Azure, if I can type, group, basically we're going to create a resource group. Create is the command word, and then here I'm going to give it the name. So I'm going to call it AZ function deep dive, and then I'm gonna give it the -rj, which is stand for resource group, and I'm gonna give it the location. Where do I want it to be created? I'm just gonna put UK South, and this should take a few seconds, and as we can see here, it automatically created it for me successfully. Perfect. So once I've created that, the next step is I want to create my storage account. So how do I create my storage account? Also, I'm going to utilize the Azure CLI. So AZ for Azure storage, because as we said, every Azure function must have a storage account. So we're going to put storage account, and then we're going to put the word create, because basically I'm creating one, and then I'm going to give it a name, and this name is going to be AZ functions. Let's put it func storage, and let's make it ML demo, for example. And I'm gonna put the location, which is gonna be basically UK South, and I'm gonna need to specify the resource group. So basically I need to call the resource group name. So I'm gonna put here resource dash group. I'm gonna give it the same name of the resource group that I created earlier, which is gonna be AZ functions deep dive, I think -rj, yeah. And then basically I need to specify the SKU of this resource group. I'm just gonna put the standard. So basically for this storage account, I need to specify what type of redundancy that I want for it. I'm just going to utilize the standard local redundancy instead of using the JO redundancy, because it's a cheaper one, it's only a demo one. So I'm going to just put standard LRS, which is local redundancy, and we'll click on enter, and just take also a few seconds to be completed. You can see it started running, and you see the nice animation. And let's check the browser while we do that to see if the resource groups have been created successfully. And this is the resource group from before. Now if I refresh, I should see the resource group that I created directly from the terminal, which is AZ functions deep type-rg. Perfect. And as we can see here, it has automatically created my storage for me. So if I go here inside this resource group, I need to see a storage account created. Usually take a few seconds for it to be reflected. Let's close it and come back to it. Sorry, not this one. And as we can see here that our storage account has been automatically created for us. It has the same name as your func storage ML demo. Great. Once we have created those, now what we need to do is we need to actually create the Azure function itself. So how do we create this Azure function itself? It's also gonna be very easy through the terminal. Now let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's clear this. And basically what we're gonna be doing is, the first thing we're gonna be calling the Azure CLI, and then we're gonna tell it that we need to create a function app, and then we're gonna give it create. So we specify the CLI, then we specify what do we wanna utilize from Azure CLI, and then we create that command for that functionality. And then here we specify the resource group, resource-group, and basically we can call the same resource group that I have created before, which is AZ functions deep dive -rj. And once this is done, what we need to specify right now is the consumption plan location. So we're gonna tell where do we wanna host this Azure function. So we need to put -- consumption plan -location, and I'm gonna put it just in UK South. Great. After that, we need to specify the runtime, which language is this function is gonna be in. So I'm gonna put it .NET. So runtime, I'm gonna specify .NET, and then I need to specify which version of my Azure function. As we said, we have 1, 2, 3. I want to specify version 3. So I'm gonna put functions -versions 3. And then after that, what I need to do is I need to specify the name of the function and the storage account that I have utilized. So we need to put -- storage account, and then $C. Great. And then I need to specify the name of it. It's going to be AZ func, I think, storage ML demo. Let me double check that. AZ func storage ML demo. Yeah, that should be fine. And now if I click on enter, this should take a few seconds. Oh, it says that I have an error. Maybe I misspelled something. Let's see. And I didn't give it a name. See, that's the issue. So let's give it a name. So I'm gonna call it first, give it a name. I'm gonna call it AZ function demo 1. Very creative name. Oh, let's put ML at the end. Okay. So let's wait for this. We can see the runtime version is not supported. Okay, that should be fine. Let's wait a few seconds. There's a lot of more parameters that I can input, but these I think the main ones that we need to specify in order for us to benefit the most from it. So let's wait a few seconds more. Perfect. Now it has been created successfully. Let's go back to the portal, and will take a few seconds to show up here. but we got the confirmation message here that everything has been created successfully, and we can see all of these parameters that has been implemented. And now let's refresh here the resource group, and we can see that application inside automatically has been created for me, and my AZ function demo1 ML has automatically been created. And if I go here, I can see all of the configuration that I have inputted, that's running in UK South, it has type Windows, version runtime is 3 as I have specified, so on and so forth. It belongs to the same resource group that I have chosen, which is great. So once I have done that, now let's clear this and let us deploy this nice function that we have created. Let's change one thing here, and let's put this in, and let's say it's gonna be Mohamad local function demo1, for example, and let's save this. And now let us just deploy it. So how do we deploy it? Here is the easy part. Again, we need to utilize the func, because now we're gonna be utilizing the functions to deploy. We have did all of the infrastructure with the Azure CLI. Now we're gonna go back to the functions tools that we can actually deploy through it, and then we're gonna tell it that we're gonna deploy it to Azure, and then we're gonna specify the function app that we want to deploy to, and we're going to specify published, which is going to be the keyword. So basically func, we're utilizing the Azure function tools, we're telling it that we want to publish to Azure, then we're specifying the function app, and we're giving it the publish keyword, and now we're specifying the name of it. What did we call that function app? This is it, Azure function 1 demo. Okay, let's paste this here, and let's click on enter, and this should take, I think, roughly a minute, but we can see here what does it do, and let's explain it. What does it do? First, it builds it, make sure that there is no build errors, and once it builds it and make sure that everything is as it should be, basically it connects to Azure. Once it connects to Azure, it downloads the information of that function app that we have created there, based on the configuration that we have there. Once it gets all of this information from Azure, it basically zips the entire output folder, and then it uploads that zip file into the into Azure in order for us to utilize it. So as we can see here, basically it got the information that it needed from Azure. It created an archive, which basically created a zip folder of the published version of this application, and then it uploaded back to Azure, and then it gave us the confirmation that the deployment has been completed. And now what it's doing is sensing the triggers, which basically, because we have specified an HTTP trigger, it gets the confirmation that the HTTP trigger is now updated there on this specific function app, and it will automatically give us the URL that we want in order for us to actually start calling this function app, which is mind-blowing if you think about it, because it basically did all of this job for us without us doing anything. All we need is some commands on the terminal, and we got all of this dynamically for us. Great. Now let's try this. So let's take this one, let's copy it, and now let's go back to our web browser. Let's open a new one, and let's give it a name at the end. I'm gonna call this name, again, it's gonna be Mohamad. I click on enter, and now this should run, and it's gonna give me hello Mohamad. This is HTTP triggered function, perfect. And we can see AZ function 1 function demo 1 ML, perfect. And now the nice thing about it, if I go here, we can see that automatically we have confirmation to start working, because we can see the memory is up. And if I go to the logs, let's see the logs, if it's actually, if I go to log stream, it will take a few seconds to connect. Now let's run this again. It's connected now, so let's run this again, and now we should be able to see the logs coming through. And as we can see here, we have the log Mohamad local function demo1 is automatically showing for us, which is exactly what we want, which means that we have the latest version of our application. Great. So now we have covered how we can create Azure functions in two ways. One through the Azure Portal, through the Azure Portal and the wizard, and the other one is created through the command line. The last step that we're going to be covering today is how we can create it through Terraforms. which is basically creating a template that we can actually utilize and reuse anytime that we want. So let us go back here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete all of those because I don't really need them anymore. So let's delete this resource group, and basically when I delete the resource group, it will delete everything in it. So basically that's what I want. Let's remove these quotes and just click on delete. Now this should take another few seconds. Okay, great. Now that has been deleted, let's go back to our code editor and let's clear this. And now we need to do some stuff in order for us to utilize Terraforms locally. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we need to have Terraform installed locally. Again, we're going to be utilizing the command line and homebrew in order for us to install this dependency, but again, it's very easy to install Terraform on your machine. So first we're going to be utilizing brew tap. We're going to utilize the HashiCorp and we're just going to tap it. And once we do that, we're going to have access to the libraries that they have. Great. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to install the Terraform brew. So brew install HashiCorp /tap /Terraform. This should take a few seconds. I have already installed it, but you can reinstall it again. And last thing, it's always good to do as an update after you install anything. In case there's something that needs to be updated, it will automatically updated. It will ask us to update. Perfect. Everything is up to date. Now, once we have done that and we have Azure CLI installed from before and we have logged in through Azure to our command line, now what we need to do is we need to create our Terraform file. So inside our local project, what we're going to be doing is we're going to create a new file. And this file, we can call it anything that we want as long as it have the .tf extension. So I'm going to call it just setup.terraforms. And basically right now, I've created a single file on my machine which is called setup.tf. And basically this setup.tf is going to be my main Terraform file in order for me to create my Azure functions. Great. So now, the first thing that I need to do is I need to provide Terraform. And if you don't really know how to use Terraform, I have a complete other videos on DevOps and how you can actually tell Terraform, and I will actually jump into details of every single command. I'm gonna try to cover as much as I can here in details about Terraform, but if you're really interested, you can watch that video. It'll give you a full overview about Terraforms. Great. So the first word I need to put is Terraform, and I'm gonna specify the providers, because basically Terraform is an infrastructure language if you want, and that language it allow us to communicate with different cloud providers. So it will allow us to communicate with Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, so on and so forth. So right now I need to tell Terraform with which cloud provider do I want to communicate with, and I'm gonna tell it that I want to communicate with Azure. So for this I need to put Terraform brackets, then I'm gonna say required _ providers, which is what cloud providers do I want. And then here I just want to specify that I want to utilize Azure, and then equal. And then from that point here, what I'm going to be doing is I need to specify the source of this. It's going to be Azure RM. And then here I'm going to specify which version of which source it needs to find it. So it's going to be source equal. I'm going to utilize the HashiCorp one / Azure RM. And next I need to specify which version I want to utilize, and I'm just going to specify this is 2 down, so I want to specify version 2 which is I think the latest version 67.0. Great. So I need to add a bracket here. Great. And let's move this like this, move this like this, and yeah, that should be fine. So right now Terraform, perfect. Required provider, great. And then I specified the Azure resource management, perfect. And then I specified the source where I want to get it and which version I want to utilize. Great. Once I do that, now I need to actually have the provider out, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna utilize Azure RM. And here, if I want to specify any custom features, I can add it from here, but I don't want to use it right now, so I'm just gonna leave it empty. Once that is done, as we said, in order for us to have an Azure function on Azure, what I need to do first, I need to have a resource group, then I need to have a storage account. Then here for this example, I'm going to utilize a service plan just to show you how we can create it through a service plan. And then after that, we need to create the Azure function. So we have four things that we need to create: a resource group, a storage account, service plan, and an Azure function. So let's start with the resource group. So how do we specify that? So first, we're telling Terraform that we have a resource that we need to create, and this resource is going to be a resource group. So if I type Azure RM underscore resource underscore group, we can see if I click on top, it's automatically there for us. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it AZ underscore func underscore resource group. So this name here that I'm actually adding is not going to be the name that's going to be reflected on Azure. This name here is the variable that I want to have for Terraform. So because I'm going to be referring to this resource group later on, I need somehow to refer to it. So that's the name that I can utilize. Now for the name that's going to appear on Azure, I specify it inside of it. So I put name, and basically I'm going to put give it the name Azure dash functions dash demo dash RJ, and then I'm going to specify the location, and I'm just going to give it UK South. Great. So now the first thing is done, which is basically creating the resource group. Let's perfect, create a resource group. So once I've done that, the next one is going to be basically create a storage account. So again, it's going to be a resource, and then I'm going to use the Azure RM underscore storage underscore account. I'm going to give it a name, so I'm going to call it Azure func storage. And this is again, this is the name, the variable name of this resource. It's not the actual name that's going to be reflecting on Azure. This is the name is going to be reflected on Azure, and I'm going to call it Azure func what should we call it, to func storage YouTube, for example, because they have to be unique names. And then for every storage account, we need to specify the resource group. So we're going to utilize the resource group that we have created earlier. So we're going to put resource group name, and I don't want all of this. Let's remove this. Let's remove all of it, and I can then put it, so it's going to be Azure RM resource group. As you can see, it has automatically picked up the Azure function RG, which is perfect. And then I'm just going to put .name. Great. Once I've done that, now I specify the locations. I'm going to use the same location as the resource group, so I can use Azure RM underscore resource underscore group dot az underscore function underscore rj dot location. So basically I'm telling it that I want to get a resource group, and then I'm specifying which variable, which is this one, and then I'm utilizing the name and the location from here. Great. Then I'm going to specify the account tier is going to be standard, which is going to be for the storage. So account tier is going to be standard. And then basically I'm going to specify the application type, and similar to what we have done before, it's going to be local redundant. So I'm going to put account replication type, and I'm just going to use LRS. Perfect. So now that we have created the Azure resource group, that I've created the Azure storage account, now we have to create the service plan, and then we're going to create the function app. Easy. So now let's create the service plan. So again, we're going to utilize resource Azure RM underscore app service plan. Great. Now I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say Azure dash func dash sp service plan. Very simple, straight to the point. And now I'm going to give it a name. and this name is going to be reflected on Azure, so I'm going to call it Azure dash functions dash service dash plan. Now we have to utilize the same location as we have done before, so we're gonna put location, and this location is gonna be Azure RM underscore resource underscore group dot Azure AZ underscore func underscore RJ dot location. And then after that we need to specify the resource group name, similar to what we have done before. So resource group name, I'm just gonna tab it because it's gonna be the same thing as we have already written before. And the nice thing about Visual Studio Code, it will help you with the autocomplete as well. There's different extensions that you can install, which I think I should have mentioned it before, but I'll mention it now. So if you go here inside the extension, you can see that Azure have a lot of extension, but for example for me, for Terraform, I have the Terraform. I have the Terraform here installed, which basically gives me access to some intelligence and to help me with the autocomplete. Perfect. So I have covered this. So after the resource group, what I'm going to be doing now, I need to specify the servers that this is going to be utilizing on. So for now, I'm just going to utilize Linux. So it's gonna be Linux, and then we're gonna put is it reserved? Yes. And once we have done that, now I specify the SKU, and this SKU is gonna be, because I want it dynamic, so we'll put the tier, it's gonna be dynamic, which is basically means that it's gonna be the consumption. And then I need to specify the size, and for now I'm just gonna put Y1. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure what Y1 stand for. I think it's the smallest one, but yeah. So here reserved, I didn't put true. Once we have done all of those, the last thing I need to do is actually to create my app. Perfect. So again, I need to use resource. I'm gonna use Azure RM underscore function underscore app, and then it's gonna be super we're gonna give it the name super Azure function. Super Azure, let's give it dash AZ func. That's a fun name. And now we're gonna give it the name, and then we're gonna give it the same thing because it's super Azure function. And then we're gonna give it the location, which is gonna be similar to what we have done before. So Azure RM underscore resource group underscore group dot AZ underscore func underscore RJ dot location. And then we need to specify the resource group. It's going to be the same thing. Now I need to specify the app service plan ID. So app underscore service plan ID, service underscore plan underscore ID is going to equal to Azure RM underscore app service underscore plan. I think I called the service plan AZ dash func service plan. Yeah, it's autocomplete Azure dash func dash SP, and then we're gonna just utilize the ID for it. Now we need to specify the storage account. So basically everything we're doing through the terminal and through the wizard, we're doing it here. But the nice thing about this is we can actually utilize it as many times as we want. So once we have written it once, we can create as many as we want directly from here. So now that we have the storage account access key, we're gonna put the Azure RM underscore storage underscore account dot AZ func. Is it called AZ func storage? What is it called? Yeah, AZ func storage dot. I think it's the primary key, primary access key. Yeah. Primary underscore access underscore key. And then after that we need to specify the storage account name. storage account name, it's gonna be a similar thing. So Azure rm underscore storage underscore account dot az function storage az no az function func storage dot, it's gonna be the name, and lastly is basically gonna be the OS type that this function is gonna run on. Because we specified the app service plan on Linux, let's do it as Linux again. I'm gonna put OS underscore type, and it's gonna see as Linux. Okay, great. So that summarizes our Terraform. So what we have done here is we have created, first we have specified which cloud provider that we want to utilize, and then we specified the resource group that Azure Functions needs, then the storage account, then the service plan they're gonna run in, that they're gonna run in, and then lastly we specified the Azure Function app. Great. Once we have done those, now let's see how we can actually implement this on Azure. Let's go back to the web browser to make sure that there is nothing there, and let's go back to resource group, and we can see we don't have anything except the default one that I have. Perfect. So right now, in order for us to utilize Terraform, the first thing I need to mention, we have already logged in to Azure through our terminal, which is Azure login. So if you didn't do so already, please make sure you are logged in. And after that, we need to actually initialize Terraform for this project. So how do we do that? We just put Terraform, and then we're gonna put in it, and that's it. And now what's doing is actually it's initializing the Terraform for us, making sure that all of our code is valid. So once it has done that, it has initialized it for us. Now we need to plan it. Basically, a plan is like mimicking all of the files. It's basically like it's gonna give us like a blueprint of what's gonna be creating on Azure. So Terraform plan, and it's gonna create a blueprint. Sorry, it shouldn't have added this. Enter. So it says missing requirement. What did we do wrong? The account tier is required, and it wasn't found on the account storage account. Let's see. Account storage account. Okay, what did I miss? So name, resource group, location, account tier, standard, LRS. So it's saying here that on line 22, okay, Azure storage, the resource group. Okay, maybe the resource group is wrong. Let's see the resource group. So the resource group name, it's gonna be resource group. That's fine. Azure function, and we're giving it the name. Okay, so let's see the name here. So Azure function, Azure RM resource group, we're giving this to them. Okay, Azure functions dash demo dash RJ UK South. Okay, let's try this again. Account tier is required. Oh, I have here put access tier. It should be account tier. That's why autocomplete is bad. Well, not bad, but sometimes it can get you into problems. So, okay, let's try this again. Terraform plan. So the nice thing about the plan is we can actually see if there's anything wrong with our code, and we can see here that it picked up something that is telling us that the Azure resource group should only consist of lowercase letters and numbers between 3 and 24 characters. So here it's saying on line 49 is too long. So this one here, the Azure function resource group name, so this shouldn't be there. So this one here, it should be, okay, this is wrong, completely wrong. So the storage account name, it should be .az func storage .name. That's it. Now let's try this again. Again, autocomplete. I shouldn't have done autocomplete. Perfect. Now it has completed successfully. We can see that all of the items that it needs to create, it has laid it out nicely for us, like a nice blueprint that we can actually take a look and view what's gonna be creating. So we can see here it will be creating this with all of these different configurations, so on and so forth. Great. So once we have done that and we fixed everything that we need to fix, the next step is we need to actually execute this against Azure. And how do we do that? Terraform apply. And basically it's gonna ask us to confirmation, are we sure they want to do this, because it's gonna create those resources and the resources might cost us money. So I'm gonna say yes, and another few seconds. You can see the process first by creating the resource group, and then it started creating the storage account, the service plan. Now it's tying everything in together, and we can see it's still working. So this sometimes can take up to a minute or so. We'll just wait for it until it finishes. Great, now it has been successfully completed. We can see that we have the 4 resource group it says, and we have everything there. Now let's check it on the portal. Now let's go back to our web browser and just let us refresh the resource group, and we can see that the Azure function demo.rj has been created for us. And if we go in, we can see that we have our storage account has been created, our service plan has been created. If we wait a few more seconds and we refresh, we can see our Azure function has been created. Let's give it a few seconds. Perfect. We can see the super Azure func has been created for us. If we give it more seconds, we can see the application insights. But let's go in here and we can see that application function has been created. Great. Now let us upload again and let's publish here. So let's go back to our terminal, and basically we're gonna utilize again func Azure function app publish, and we're gonna utilize the same name here. I think it was Azure function super or something like that. And let's hit on enter, and now we're gonna publish this local Azure function into the newly one that we have created within Terraform. And this should take a few seconds, and as we have seen before, basically it's gonna check with the server about the compatibility of it, and then it's gonna export it, zip it, and then upload that zip file, and then we're gonna have access to it, and then it's gonna provide us with the URL because it's an HTTP trigger. So func for function Azure, we're utilizing Azure function app, we're telling it to publish, and we're basically publishing it to this Azure super AZ func, which is the one we have created through Terraform. And this should take another few seconds to Azure. So func Azure function app, we can see it's getting it. So basically it built it, it's packaging it, it uploaded it, and then once it uploads it, basically it verify the triggers because it's an HTTP triggers, and we got the latest one. Now let's try running this, and we should see that it's running as it should be. So let's copy this, go back to our web browser, paste it here, and add name, and let's put YouTube, and I click on enter. We can see hello YouTube. This is a HTTP trigger, and basically this is the outcome that we have requested. And one nice thing about Terraform is once I do this, and let's say I don't want really these resources anymore, I want to delete them, I can just type Terraform destroy, and then once that should be finished, it will remove all of my resources and the resource group that I have created, and basically I will not be charged for anything because everything will be deleted. And now as you can see here, it's telling me it's gonna remove all of those. Do I really want to destroy them? I'm gonna say yes, and once I click on yes, it will start to delete everything from the Azure portal for me. And once that's done, we can go back to the Azure portal here. Right now it will we can still see it's there, but once that is done, we can see that it will remove everything for us and started to delete it. It should take another few seconds to be complete. But now let's go here and refresh, and we can start to seeing that stuff are getting removed. CSL still destroying, which is basically removing and deleting all of these resources. Let's give it roughly around a minute. Perfect. Now it has completed. We can see that all of the resources have been deleted for us. And if we go back here and we refresh, we can see that it's not available anymore. And if I go to the resource groups and I refresh this, we shouldn't see the other one. And everything has been removed. Perfect. So this summarized and final the video for today. We have done a deep dive on Azure Function. We have covered different aspects of it, and we have understood how everything works. Please share your questions in the comment down below, and if there's any other comment or any other topics in Azure you'd like me to cover part of this series, please also let me know. Please like, share and subscribe if you like this video. It will really help the channel. Have a great day.